Google's Notebook LM just came out with 2 new features that we can use to build an entire infographic business. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. It's actually very simple. The key is in understanding how Notebook makes isolated content. What this means is we can actually isolate content, throw it into the Infographics generator, which is completely automatic, or the slide deck creator, and get something that we can use to get traffic and make money in a very straightforward way. So if you're excited to see this new feature and how I'm using it in my business right now to make money, smash that like button. Let's fire up the computer and go to work. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. When we look at this, we can see that Notebook LM actually creates really good infographics right off the cuff. So all we need to do is give it some information that we want and create the infographic with the click of a button. Information structured differently can equal money when done correctly. And as I mentioned before, the key to Notebook LM and why I'm such a big fan of it is the isolated information. We can actually give it something that's going to isolate in a very specific way, and it's not going to go outside of it. If I go to ChatGPT and I say, make an infographic about this topic, it's going to go out there and look for all kinds of different things. Whereas Notebook LM is only going to look at what I give it, which is super important. And we can see here that it actually does a really good job of creating these infographics. Here's one I did for a faucets website to see what the niche looks like. And it made it kind of cool with like a little faucet and things like that. And you could see it did get the data points that I wanted, which were like the SEO and everything like that, the estimated value on GoDaddy, Dynadot, and stuff like that. Now, when we go through and look at this, you can see the differences that it does, because I wanted to go through and say, okay, if I give it the same prompt and the same infographic, is it going to create the same exact thing? And the answer was actually no, it created a different one, which is pretty cool. So looking at that was really important. Now, when we go through and also look at the slideshow feature, we can see that it does make a full-on slideshow for our content, and it does a really good job of structuring the information. Now, I'm going to show you why this is important and how we can use this to make money in just a minute. Now, also going through, looking at this, we can choose to create either a portrait, a landscape, or a square, which is important for social media. Now, looking at this, we can see it'll actually give us statistics and understand the data in a very specific way. When we look at this, we want to understand that people read headlines. This is why infographics work. We're going to take a look at some businesses that make lots of money with infographics and how they work. But first, before we get into that, we need to understand that when using AI, we want to have a human in the mix. We don't want to just go out there and tell ChatGPT to keep making infographics. We want to have this structured in a very good way. Some examples we're going to look at, and these are estimates. So we need to understand that this is a business. The results are not typical, implied, or guaranteed. One of these businesses has a ton of employees. They've been doing it for years. And the vast majority of people watching make money online videos make nothing. We need to understand this as a business and understand where we're going. Now, if we were to look at Visual Capitalist, which is a very big social media publisher, we could see that they are in the investor business professional niche. They're making money with sponsored content, with monetization, and all different things like that. From the estimates I can find, it looks like they're in the neighborhood of like $17 million a year. So this type of business where you're using infographics and content to promote things is not small. This is something that's very big for those that want to do it. There's also an example we looked at for VGraphs, which we could use social media, YouTube, and stuff like that. And their audience is data enthusiasts, where they're going through and making infographics based on data. This is a smaller team. They're not showing their public revenue, but it's probably pretty good from what I can see. The problem with most infographics is it's unfocused info. The vast majority of people are going out there and they're using AI. They're creating infographics that don't really focus on what the user wants, and they're not stopping people in their tracks for a specific reason. If I can make content, I want to make content that is specifically designed to get people that are interested in a certain topic and get them over to whatever it is that makes me money. This is the read more in comments model, where we're like, okay, here's this thing, read more in comments. So if I was to go out there and make something like this, which I made for my sobriety channel, we went through and said, okay, let's take something like Occam's razor and let's apply it to sobriety. So I went through and created this. I had some content that I made in ChatGPT, and then I had this turn it into an infographic, which did a really good job. Now, is this going to stop the scroll? No. More about that in just a minute, because I think it's very important that we understand what's going to stop the scroll and what's going to get people interested. Here's another one here. And while this is a really good infographic, it's not exactly doing what I want it to do. Okay, more about that. We're going to get into this and dive in and show you how it works. When we go through and look at these, you can see like Infographics show, gigantic channel, lots of money, also has a Facebook profile as well. So when we look at this, we need to understand, yes, there is a huge business. There is a lot of money. We're going to show you how it works. When we look at this also, we need to understand that Notebook LM has a daily cap. So I think it looked like it timed out at around 10 infographics. So when I went through and created these, there was a spot where it was like, hey, you know what, you're done for the day, wait till tomorrow to create more. I also went through and used this on blog posts, which gave me this great slideshow of the blog post as well. Now, let's go through and talk about how this works. First of all, we want super focused infographics based on interesting facts. If you can have interesting facts in your niche and you can go sideways with your content, then you can create stuff that people are going to look at over and over and over again. There's a video in the description I want you to watch after this video where we talked about using the different stories model the way that Disney did. This is super important because if you do this, you're going to see your content in a different way. No longer are you just in the credit repair niche or the food niche or dieting niche. Now you're in something different because now you appeal to everyone. This is super important. This is a difference between like $1 a year business and like $1 million a year business, is understanding what is my niche, what are people going to want. What we want to do first and foremost is start with a niche idea and preferably a domain name. So where I have, an economics one we're going to look at, we want to go through and look at the domain name, tie it into it, because we want to have somewhere to send all of our traffic, much like they do with the Facebook one, where they're like, oh, hey, go to our website or whatever it is. So let's go through, let's talk about the power of infographics, why they work. When we look at this, we want to understand that infographics have a good hook. It is visual, it makes sense. Something like, what if I told you visuals aren't just eye candy, they're a business? That would be something that would stop the scroll. They're going to say, hey, check this out. This is how it works. Today, we're breaking down how creators make serious money from infographics. So that would be an example for this video. Looking at it and saying, okay, maybe my video or my blog post or whatever it is isn't going to take off right away. I can make an infographic to make it work. And when we go in and look at Notebook LM, what we're going to do is we're going to compare several different things. So if I go through here, I can go through and add a source. What I like to do is go to ChatGPT first and ask it about a topic. Okay, this is super important. If I'm going in the economics market, I can see here the law of supply. And looking at this, if I say make a tall infographic explaining the law of supply for economics, this is what I get, which is not that great. It cuts off the words, not much there. However, if I go through and I say explain it, so I'm using ChatGPT for what it's good for, which is research, and then I go through and I use Notebook LM to actually get the final result. So if I go over here and show you what this looks like, and I look at this one here, I believe we had it over here in my other example, and we take that info. So here we have our Notebook LM, and I actually took the info and I pasted it in as the source. So this was just copy and pasted from ChatGPT right here, right? Same exact thing. Now, when I went through and I made the infographics, you can see right off the bat, it made an infographic on its own. Well, this is the one I did after. So the one on its own was this one here, which looks really good. There were some things I didn't like and some things I like. However, the visuals were great. I asked it to do like a little dark visual, very vivid, very poppy, which worked really good, okay? Now, when I went through and I isolated it and said, hey, now I want to make this statistical with charts and things like that, you can see it actually did a much better valuable thing to the user, right? This is more valuable information structured in a way that they're gonna look at it and be like, okay, hey, check it out. Here we have the higher price, the market prices and things like that. Now, when looking at this, the cool part about it is we can get an infographic or a slideshow, like if we did a slide deck on this, it'll do that as well, in a matter of minutes, which is crazy cool. Now, understanding this and understanding, hey, I can get this stuff in minutes, which used to take days or used to be kind of a pain and I couldn't get it done, now we can do this in minutes. Now, looking at an infographic, first we need to say, what is an infographic? It is a visual representation of information or data. Why they work? They're high engagement, builds authority, and drives traffic. The four main monetization models, when we get into making money, we need to understand where it's coming from. First, we have the service provider if you're going to create infographics for companies. So I can go and find people who are bloggers and influencers and content creators, and I can say, hey, I will create this for you, and we'll just look at your content and create infographics. That's one way you can make money. I don't think it's the best because, again, you're limited by how many you can create. However, with this model and all of the tools, you could do an outsourcing play, which could work really well as well. Next up, we have the digital product seller, where you could go through and you can actually sell infographics templates and bundles and things like that. Again, that's a little bit more scalable. It can be done, but it's going to tap out with all the people that want this specific stuff. What I'm going to focus on is the content creator, the influencer. What we're going to do is we're going to create an infographics media company to get traffic to the things that make us money. And as you saw in some of the examples, you can do YouTube ads, sponsorships, merchandise, or even getting people to a blog. This is important because if I can make a bunch of content and get a following on Facebook, which is something that we taught years ago in our meme profits class, where we talked about how to make memes on social media to get a bunch of traffic. And we had a lot of people doing really well. Some of the people that were teaching were making a lot of money doing that. Again, not typical, implied, or guaranteed. This is about staying the course, and it's about creating good things that your market wants, which Notebook LM makes it much, much easier to do. So what I would do is pair this with a blogging model, where we can get paid to put our content on Facebook through the monetization. We can get paid to make little YouTube videos out of it through monetization. Obviously, make sure you're doing ethical stuff, good stuff that serves the user. It's not that hard to do. As you see here, I went through and did an example and said, hey, find 100 interesting facts that help people understand finance and saving money. This is the kind of thing I can go through and I can say, explain this, right? So I could go to ChatGPT and I can say, explain the average American can't cover 500 without an emergency, or 500 emergency without borrowing. What this will do is it'll start to make it understandable. Then I can put this in Notebook LM and I can start to get something specific. So if I go through and I put it like this, and we'll do an actual example so you can see, and we'll wait for it to be done. And then we'll just go into Notebook LM and create this. And when we create it, what we want to do is make sure that it has that hook example. And you can even say, hey, make a good hook or something like that. So let's take this and we'll copy right here. So we'll take this here and we can put this into Notebook LM, right like this. So we'll just open a new notebook. That way it's isolated. Put the copied text right in here like this. It'll understand the text, and then when we click on infographic, what we want to do is go through and choose like portrait or square. Landscape would be a wide one, which I don't think I'm going to use that too much unless I use it as like a blog hero image. That's where I'd use that. Portrait I would use on social media because that's going to do like this here, where it's going to be big up and down style, good for social media, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. And then if I'm doing a square, I can do multiples. So if I wanted to explain multiple different versions of why $500 is important or whatever, I can do that there. Now, when I go through here, I can choose concise if I want less words, standard if I want medium, or detailed if I want a bunch. Then what I found out is you can actually put a JSON prompt or any type of prompt in the infographic you want to create. So I could say something like, make this for social media with a engaging hook that gets them in based on, can you spot $500 or something like that. Let's put 500 in there, right? Something like that. And when we go through and have this specific, what I did is I went through and made a bunch of prompts for this, right? So we could go through and find like maybe the hero journey or a game board or something like that. A game board might work because, maybe the $500 thing. And what'll happen is putting these prompts in here, I would just have like a JSON prompt like this, it'll go through and do that. So I could say, make this for social media with an engaging hook, dark background, bright text. And then I'll put that JSON prompt, and you'll see what this does with the info, which is really, really cool. It starts to make it understand it, and you can see here it did actually time out. Let's see if we have one on our other one. We'll just take this source here, copy the source, and hopefully we do. Sometimes this times out. I think Google should give us more because this just seems to be way too little, especially when we're paying for it. But at any rate, let's go through and type this in. So we'll do copied text, right like that. And then we should be able to click infographic, portrait, detailed, and then we'll get our game board prompt. Let's do dark background, bright text for social media, and then we'll do the game board prompt like that. So portrait, good. Hopefully it'll generate it. Let's see. There it goes. It is generating. So we have at least one left over here. That is the downside, is it does time out, which, you could use ChatGPT if you're doing more than this, but I think it's like in between 10 and 20 infographics you can get. Now, if you use the slide deck and you have specific prompts where each slide could be its own infographic, then you can get more of them. That's something you could do. So understanding that's kind of important. As you see, what I'm doing here is I just have 2 Notebook LM accounts, one for each different business. That way I can get more, because when you get into making a bunch of these, which is the key, you're going to need like 10 or 20 a day to actually start to make a difference. Now, going through and looking at these examples like Visual Capitalist, they're doing data-rich infographics for investors. Monetization is sponsored research, premium subscriptions, and partnerships. So you could even have, like, let's say you wanted to do this for AI prompting, I can have infographics about how to prompt, drive them into personalityprompts.com, and boom, now I have a business. Now, if I wanted to go through and make $100,000 a year with an infographic business, again, it is going to take a lot of work. We need to understand this because it's not like you're just gonna wake up, post one infographic straight out of Notebook and make money. This takes a lot of work, but for those who wanna do it, this is the strategy. What we wanna do is look at the different types of infographics. So first, pick our niche. Obviously, a financial niche or something that is tied to a lot of advertisers would make more money. However, you could do like dieting, weight loss, or something like that. Obviously, fact check, obviously be honest with your info. Don't give health advice if you're not a doctor. Understanding this in a real world way. What I would do is look at something like the one that I'm doing in the economics niche, and you can see like, okay, economics, this is pretty easy. We're just talking about different economics theories like big push theory or approaches to marketing or whatever it is. You can do this about anything, and as long as you follow that Disney content video in the description, I think this will make a lot more sense. But if you go through and you look at like inflation and things like that, these are things that are in the public mind already anyway, and we can make infographics about here's inflation report for, December 2025. Very simple. And then what you want to do is you want to have your blog show them tips on how to outpace inflation, maybe with rewards credit cards that give them a couple of % back or something like that, or maybe investment strategies or tips or whatever it is. Very, very simple, straightforward. This is what we want to do. Now, if we were going to go in a different niche, maybe something like this where we have angel numbers and spiritual things, again, the content never ends. You could just keep going and going and going. This is something where maybe you can lead them into a course or law of attraction or something that fits what they want. Very straightforward. Or maybe you're doing like romance and text and things like that. You can get them into a ClickBank product about how to, text the romance back in your relationship or something like that. Very simple, very straightforward. And the key is that all of your stuff is going to have an end game, which is go to my website and get this thing. Okay? The idea is build up a following. A percentage of the people will go to the website. The website is going to have the more of principle, which is like, okay, you're going to get more of these over at my website. And you can see here it does a very good job. Here's the $500 emergency one, where it shows you like, okay, the $500 surprise, most people can't afford it. financial fragility, cost of living, heavy debt burden. It kind of shows all of the stuff, and this would be something you can use, right? Now, I would probably taper it down a little bit more and say like, can you cover these emergencies? Have the like, oh, your house breaks, your car breaks, or whatever. Something straightforward, okay? Thinking about how we can simplify, to me, this would be a little bit overcomplicated. So we'd want to use some of the prompts to make it more simple. Now, going through here, let's take a look at some of the different prompts and the different types. We have process infographics, which show steps, like you're applying for an apartment. You need this, you need that, you need this. Simple, straightforward. What we do here is show steps, use tutorials, visual cues, things like that. The prompt would be something like generate a process infographic that visualizes the 5-step process for X. And going through and looking at that, I think I had an example here where we went through and had one of these. Let me see if I can find it here. And it had like the steps process. And it showed like, okay, here's the different things you want to go through with the steps. And it did a pretty good job where it had those steps outlined for us, which was pretty cool. Let's see, I think it was like this, ancient wisdom for modern strategy. So that was decent. I would actually say I would turn this into like a bunch of different infographics. Or you could use this as a big one and then say, oh, hey, get the tips in the comments below. But again, it's about making content structure differently. You can do statistical infographics where you say create a statistical infographic summarizing data points. And this would be where you have like charts and things like that. Again, looking at some examples there, I went through and had, I believe it was this productivity one. And we just ask it to make stats and it'll find them. Yeah, this is one it did really good, which was like writing, drafting, meeting, research. It was like how to use AI to make your day better, which was pretty cool. You can do informational, which would be like, you know, here's all the different information visualized. Like this one here would be informational. Here's the prompt cheat sheet for work. These kind of things people love, they save them, they work good. Now, when creating these, what I would do is I would brand it with my domain. So, you know, I'd have personalityprompts.com on there or something like that. Informational, timeline, if you're going to do like, oh, here's what inflation looked like from the 50s to today. Those are things that people look at and it works really well to capture their attention. You could say something like create a timeline infographic detailing the progression of inflation from the 50s to today. Or geographic, where you could do like, you know, here's the GDP of top countries or something like that. Understanding that information structured differently is going to get traffic in different places that we wouldn't just normally get with a blog that ranks for these types of things, right? It will get traffic, but what we want is more traffic. The more traffic you get that is focused on a specific idea or niche, the more money you can make. Again, looking at this like a business, okay, can I make a bunch of details about like credit card fees? That would be good stuff to put out there, and then I'd get a domain that fits it, and boom, now I have the niche that works. I could turn it into videos, slideshows, infographics, all different kinds of things, and using Notebook LM is an absolute game changer. Here is a list of different infographic types that we can use, and we can go through and understand. We could do process-based, which is like step-by-step workflows, roadmaps, funnels, cycles, or loops. We could do something like data or statistical, heat maps, correlation charts, forecasts, like, oh, hey, maybe you have like, here's what Bitcoin did, here's what it could do. Obviously being honest and upfront where it's like nobody knows what it's gonna do. We just have ideas based on past information. That's what we can go through and include here, which would be really good. Or even like, if you bought Bitcoin 6 months ago, here's how much you'd have today. Get the report below, or something like that. Very, very straightforward. Informational infographics where we can do pillar topics, framework models, cheat sheets, FAQ clusters. And one of the tips that I found here was being able to go through in Notebook LM. If you're a blogger, you could literally go through with your blog and you can use that as the only source. So if I had a blog post about a topic, I could just go through and use my link here. It'll make that infographic about that blog post. I could throw that on social media, drive traffic to my blog post. Or I could throw it on ChatGPT and say, pair this with something in the news recently that I could go through and get something that's in the mindset now. Very, very important. And you could just paste it in there and boom, there you go. Also, we could go through and do like timelines, geographic comparisons, and on we go. Listicles are very good. Hierarchicals, where you have like a pyramid of, oh, hey, most people spend money on this, but the top millionaires spend on this. Ladders, organization charts. What it's going to do is help people visualize data. Instead of reading a blog post, they're going to see this thing and say, oh, that's interesting. I want more info. That's the key, is to get them to want more info. Lists, resumes or personal brand infographics, storytelling. Can you find stories in your niche where you could go through and be like, oh, here's 50 stories to help you understand finances? Or for me, I'm using this in the alcohol recovery market where I could find a bunch of stories. Very, very cool stuff. And you can have like a hero journey and stuff like that. Structural infographics or spatial, where you're doing like slide scales, attribute maps, sweet spot finders like a Venn diagram or something like that in your market where it would make sense. And this is something where AI really shines, and it can make a Venn diagram of like, I mean, think about if I made a Venn diagram of all the AI tools I used, and you could see the ones that I use the most for everything. That would be valuable. That's something that Notebook LM can do and make in a very, very structured type of infographic or slideshow. And again, it's all based on the data I give it. It's not going to go look for new stuff. It's just going to be based on what I want. Scientific tech infographics, maybe you could talk about like iPhone versus this, or maybe for Black Friday, you do a bunch of infographics on don't buy this, or don't shop here to find deals or something like that. Very, very important. We can do interactive style, business and marketing, hybrid, and on we go. The key here is using these for traffic generation. What actually is going to get views? Understanding this is key, and this is what I boiled into a bunch of different prompts. We have a whole folder of prompts over here where there's over 100 different infographics prompts, or 50 so far. We have over 100 in a couple of folders. But looking at this, you're going to see these have the prompts that you can put into Notebook LM and get that specific stuff. But what we want to do is we want to understand which ones get the most traffic, how do we engineer them to get traffic, and how do we build something people actually want. Here's how. We're going to go through and look at data, statistical infographics. Why? They're highly shareable, often embedded in articles, and they can even get backlinks back to your site when people start to share them. List or top X, top AI for this, top weight loss ways, top shows to watch if you're interested in being an entrepreneur. Different things like that that are perfect for social media platforms. How to and process, where we go through and we explain new things. In the AI world, there's always something new going on, so it's evergreen. We can get it reused in blogs and tutorials. Comparison infographics, interactive infographics work well as well. What we want to do is we want to study what makes people stop. What makes them traffic effective? First, we're going to look for meaningful insights, real use data, or information that's actually useful. No fluff, good stuff. Visual clarity, we want to make it readable fonts. Don't go out there and have curly letters. Stick to like Arial bold, black background, yellow or white text. Stands out, gets attention. Think about it like headlines. How can we give a headline? Okay, what's going to be something that people would actually want? Do you have $500 for an emergency? ... People who don't or who are close, they're going to read that. And then we could talk about different things that would help people in that bracket. Understanding your market is everything. If you understand your market and you can duplicate and perpetuate content that's going to help them over and over and over again, that'll get shared, that'll get views. Again, like we showed in the Meme Profits course, it worked really well when you stay the course, but most people give up after 8 posts because they don't become millionaires. Again, you're not going to get rich overnight. This takes work. Most people make nothing. This is about building an audience and using infographics to do it. We want to get them shareable. We want to make a strong SEO setup. Can I go out there and rank for different terms in Google and get my infographic ranked? This is something that works really well. Then we want to have a promotion plan. We don't just want to make one, post it on Facebook. When nobody cares about it, we give up. We want to get it on social, put it on our blog, put it on our Pinterest, make a video about it. share it in our newsletter, syndicate it to other places, get it out there, and make different outreach methods that are going to get people back to this content. That's why I want to focus on making a good one. Get good infographics. Don't just slap something up, make them very good. And Notebook LM makes this very, very simple to do. Next, we're going to do multi-channel distribution where we don't depend on a single platform. So the goal is get a niche, dissect it down into hundreds, maybe even thousands of info points. Think glossary method. Again, link in description for a video on that. Think the Disney method. Video and description for that. Going through and understanding these is key because now you're going to see your content in a different way, a way that people would want to look at over and over. Most people think the way we thought in high school, where we're like, okay, in high school we write a giant paper report on this thing. No. We don't want to think that way. We want to think many different info points, interesting facts, put it into social media where people are going to stop and read and stop and read and stop and read, build our following, then point them to the content that's bigger, that makes us money. And we can make money just for posting these. A lot of people are monetized on Facebook. Now, again, full disclosure, you need a lot of traffic to make money on Facebook. I mean, I see people with 1 million views a month and they're making like a penny. So you're going to need a lot of views to make it work, but you can do it. There are people that are doing this. It's not that difficult. It's about duplication. It's about making what works and doubling down on what works over and over and over again. Thinking about, if I get this audience, what is Facebook going to look at? Are they going to know, hey, these people are interested in credit and debt, or these people are interested in love and romance. These people are interested in angel numbers and spirituality. That's what's going to trigger the algorithm to make it work. And again, what I see is with the algorithm, usually you're going to want like 5 to 20 posts a day, which, you can get like 5 to 10 before Notebook times out. You could do the rest in ChatGPT or get multiple accounts or something like that and make multiples of them. Understanding how this works is absolutely important because we need to get an audience. This is about growing an audience. Think about what's good, newsworthy, and what works. Now, over at personalityprompts.com, we have actually boiled all 100 infographic frameworks into prompts you can use. We've tested them. They work like crazy. You can use these with ChatGPT, Gemini, Notebook LM if you want the isolated version, and you can get very, very good stuff like the 3-step method, 6-step checklist, the flywheel system, hourglass process, and all of these things that go through and can make content in a different way. Start to think about how AI and Notebook LM can see content differently. And when you start to understand that, you can put something in here like philosophical concepts and leadership, and then you could do a mind map to understand your content differently. Each of these can have its own set of infographics and things that would help people, like key philosophers for leadership. Okay, what do these guys say about leadership? What do all the philosophers say? I mean, when you start to think about this, you're not just writing a report on leadership, you're now making infographics on all the different philosophers, what they say about leadership, leadership styles, personality styles, what kinds of leadership, and on we go. We want to think about it as, how do we turn our content into infinite content that people get hooked on, right? They want to hook them in and say, hey, this is how you're going to build and grow. Using Notebook LM for this, with the slides and the infographics and the mind map, is an absolute game changer because now we can create stuff at scale, and having a human in the mix, we can direct it. This is about directing your content so that you can get traffic that makes money. So to get all of these prompts, you can join personalityprompts.com, or we'll give a couple of them away free with the newsletter if you go put your name and email over there. Check out the videos in the description, namely watch the Disney video and the glossary method video. Those are super important to understand your content in a different way. Now, go out there, use Notebook LM, test it out. I think you're really gonna like it. Going through, and we can make infographics on blog posts super fast. You just paste your URL in here. Key, do them one at a time. And when you get to the infographic part, give it one of the prompts in personality prompts. This is gonna help you scale, get different stuff, and get stuff that's structured. Because the internet doesn't need more infographics and content, It needs stuff people are willing and wanting to watch. That's what we're going to create, and that's how it works. So check out the notes over at personalityprompts.com. We'll have some notes, some of the prompts you can use, and be sure to watch the videos in the description, smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next training.